Um, Good evening. We're calling this meeting of the Ferrisburg Planning Commission to order at 7 o'clock. May I have the roll call, please?
Chairman Post,
Here.
Commissioner Schulberg,
Present.
Commissioner Weber,
Here.
Commissioner Torgo, Commissioner Carlson,
Here.
Commissioner Hawley,
Here.
Commissioner DeYoung.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, may I move to excuse Commissioner Tuggle? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you. Consideration for approval of our July 3rd agenda. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Consideration of for approval of the June 5th minutes as printed.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 5th meeting minutes printed.
Thank you. Support. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now is the time in our meeting for public comments. If anyone in the public would like to address the Planning Commission at this time, please come forward and state your name and address, and we're all ears.
Travis Andrews, 17741 Bayberry Drive. I was here at City Council meeting. I just wanted to answer any questions related to the temporary housing request that I had put in previously. Was the enforcement action was waived last meeting, and my understanding is this meeting is to potentially put something on the books that allows temporary housing during emergency situations or construction, rebuilding a house type situations. Seems like all of you guys are here before holiday, on an evening before holiday. I appreciate that. So clearly we take planning seriously. We want to have ordinances that are appropriate. And you look around and there's trailers and lots of driveways behind people's houses, and we don't really have anything that allows that. And maybe it's one of those situations where it's just better to ask for forgiveness after the fact. I'm not here to discuss that, but it seems like we should have some sort of rules that allow for putting a trailer in your backyard or a temporary housing, which is generally going to be an RV, while you're in rebuilding. And one thought was that you're going to always submit a building permit for any sort of work that's significant enough that you can't live in the house. And so potentially it could just be tacked on to like a checkbox of like, yes, this person needs temporary housing during this building process. And then the building inspector could be a part of that approval. I'll leave it in your hands, but I just wanted to be here to answer any questions, and thank you.
Thank you. And I think we could take your matter first when we get to our regular agenda, if you can stick around a little bit. Great. Thank you. So I'd like to suggest, because we only have one person here tonight, that we take matters out of order and address item number 8, if that's agreeable, because the gentleman is here to answer any questions on that topic. Craig, can you help us? Where are we on this issue?
So like Mr. Andrews indicated that he had some damage to his house, so he came to City Council and requested permission to have a recreational vehicle in his backyard, and he would hook it up to the city water, sanitary sewer, and electricity within the house, and live in that while his house is being repaired. City Council was agreeable to that and put a moratorium on enforcing any enforcement on that. And City Council requested the Planning Commission to draft an ordinance to allow this in the future. So Mr. Jarosik has drafted a memo with some of the regulations that the Planning Commission could consider at this time.
David?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I proposed a new section 3.190G. So this is an extra last paragraph in our RV regulation section. So as you know, that section concerning RVs regulates the number, placement, location of RVs, seasonal usage, and other requirements. So this would be a section that recognizes the need for temporary on-site living arrangements resulting from damage or destruction to the principal residential dwelling. So essentially, this would allow for the temporary living in an RV through a zoning permit, and that could be done through a one-year zoning permit with up to 2 one-year extensions due to unforeseen circumstances or just the play of work or the timing of the rebuilding of the structure. So this is fairly simple in terms of the framework for the ordinance. It simply gives the allowance to have a zoning permit for temporary living beyond what we would otherwise permit. As Craig said, it would need to be connected to power, water and sewer, and also there's a provision here so that we do have setback and yard placement requirements, and this would be able to give the zoning administrator discretion to waive those in case that, based on the construction activities on the site, there may be machinery, there may be stockpile materials. We may not always have a good place, compliant place for that RV to be parked on the site. So if they did need to shift it around or put it in some place that would otherwise not be allowed, Craig would be able to allow that waiver. So otherwise, there's a simple permit process that'd be required. And then the last part of this is, once the permit expires or there's a CO for the home itself, the certificate of occupancy, should be back into compliance for the parking of that RV within 15 days. So pretty straightforward. Any questions? Be happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you're happy with this language, we can schedule it for a public hearing.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
David, did you say 1 year and then 1 year renewals?
That's the current framework, yes.
That just seems a bit long.
It could be, the 1 year is probably going to address most situations. The extra, Craig mentioned one recent building example that was in the 2-year range or in the 3-year range. So this would at least give, actually in another community, I did this to where we allowed the zoning administrator to grant the original permit, and then it was the planning commission for extensions. So and that could be, help hold someone to a little bit higher standard or let them know, hey, you need to keep moving on this. But the timeframes and the authority for the extensions is certainly up to you.
And then you're saying once a certificate of occupancy comes into effect, or once that's granted, then they'd have 15 days.
Yes, to get it back into compliance. Then that would either be in a either off-site or in a place on the property that complies with our RV storage requirements.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the 1 year initially. It's the renewals. I would just soon see them have to come in and seek another renewal. Because building permits, as we're well aware, can stay open for quite some time, can't they, Craig?
Yes.
And that way the homeowner would have to at least come in and see us more than once a year for a renewal. Push things forward.
Do you think that the planning commission should look at the renewals or just, well, we have the, the initial year, and then the zoning administrator may grant up to 2 one-year zoning permit extensions. Would you like me just to rephrase that so that they have to come back and apply for it? Maybe it reads as they just get those automatically if Craig wishes, feels that they do. Do you want it to say that they have to come in and reapply?
And again, would the zoning administrator like to approve it every 3 months or something for renewals? Or every 6 months? What would be workable for you?
Every 6 months would be good.
Every 6 months? I could see a 6-month renewal. A year just seems a bit long for a renewal.
And the only thing that we do say that whatever comes first. So if they finish their work, the permit expires. So that it doesn't allow, like if they finish their work in 6 months and they had a year, it wouldn't allow them to keep that out there for next. But I think the interval and the validity of the permit is completely up to you, whatever you're comfortable with doing. So we can do 6 months with 6 months extensions as long as the situation, as long as there's progress on the site.
The first year would be one year, and extensions would be 6 months.
Okay, 1 year and then 6 months extensions.
Just an idea I'm throwing out.
So we could address this at the public hearing as well.
Sure. Yep.
I know 1 year and 2 years is sometimes normal for these sort of circumstances. So like down in Texas Township, when they had the huge storm come through, there's still houses being done there right now. And then I know from work, a lady who was in Paw Paw, she had fire damage and she's 3 years out and still having her house. So I do think there's examples of when it, but yeah, the 1 year, 2 year makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, is this in line with most other communities' ordinances regarding emergency housing? I tried to do a little research and I could get just bare minimum.
That's right. There's not a lot out there on this. I've written probably 2 of these in more rural communities for townships. So this doesn't come up that often. You know, a lot of times there's really, unfortunately, not a provision for someone to do this. But I mean, I think it does make sense. I think it's something you can certainly consider.
I'd just like to see to make it as simple as possible, because if you have gone through a storm, a flood, or a fire, you're already really stressed out. You have financial worries. You have to house your family. And the more hoops we make people jump through, I don't think that's necessary. I want to make it as simple as possible for them. I've lived through a flood, and I know you have so much red tape and so much emotional garbage to deal with that the last thing you need to do is worry about permits and is your RV too close to the line and that kind of thing. So I'd like to make it fairly simple for people.
And just to clarify, this is for damage. This isn't just someone wants to renovate their home. It's strictly for damage.
Correct.
Okay.
I modeled this off of another one I wrote that actually allowed for it if you were building a home, if you had vacant property. So when I showed that to Craig first, we stripped that out so it was only for the case of damage or destruction.
I think we're ready to support the idea that we move this forward for public hearing.
Yes. Would you like it to stay as is for the hearing, or would you like to put a new permit or renewal interval on?
Well, I'm hearing a little back and forth about leave it 1 year or possibly do it 6-month extensions.
We could leave it as is and let you think about it until the next meeting?
Yes, it's fine with me if the rest of the commissioners are good with that. I think that there were, Rich, maybe a few more comments about being sympathetic to the emergency situations and keeping things simple, and maybe it does take several years. So, yeah, you're shaking your head. Yes. Okay. So,
would you like me to make the change to simply to say upon written request, zoning administrator may grant? So right now it just says the zoning administrator may grant up to 1 year. Should we at least say that upon written request, so it puts the burden on the applicant to make the request rather than Craig?
Without fee, right? No more fees for that.
No.
Because you don't know what the supply and demand of things for the house is going to be. I mean, they may need something that it takes another 8 months to get. I mean, you can't, I'd like to give them as much leeway as possible. It's not going to be a permanent situation, so I don't think most people are going to be upset about it.
did we answer your question, David?
not that. I mean, yes, I agree, but should we just say upon written request, just so that someone has to actually ask for the extension rather than Craig just tracking it?
I
and
think
doing
it sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Then we're scheduling that for public hearing next month? Okay, so thank you for coming out tonight. Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
I'd like to ask the commissioners, is there interest in addressing the housing topic 9 next and doing the fill permit and Pine Street afterwards? I was thinking that the housing is kind of the bigger, possibly the bigger topic, but does anyone have any feelings on this?
Gonna be too tired at the end of the night to do the other
Yes.
two?
No, I don't want to be too tired. I don't want to be too tired to do housing, so. All right, I think we have consent to proceed to the housing topic. David, would you like to start us off with the materials you prepared on the downtown area?
Sure. So this is probably a 3 or 4 part series. This is part 1 of downtown housing opportunities. So as you remember from our previous meetings, we have somewhere from 8 or 9 or 10 recommendations concerning housing and what we can do to increase the overall housing supply and affordability within the city. So next slide, or do you want me to pull or?
I'm just going to mention that your report to us on the downtown area was all online. It's not included in the written packet. So I hope everyone had a chance to go online and read that. That's very interesting information you pulled up for us, David.
Sure. Yes, so the objective of this is really to review and assess the sub-areas and determine the direction, appropriate building use, and dimensional requirements. So as we discussed in the last couple of months, it's important when we're looking at these housing recommendations to see how they affect areas on a block by block and area by area basis. So it's hard to use a broad brush when we're making these housing changes. And so it may require us to be a little bit more specific and intentional in our zoning so that we may be rezoning areas or even having, for instance, in like the core commercial zoning district, we may treat one side of the road different than the other, just depending on the character and the built environment. So it takes a bit of an exercise like this, as we'll go through this evening, to see what your priorities are and what you think is appropriate for those sub areas and blocks. So tonight, I just want to walk through the slides and get your feedback and before I put pen to paper and start making the actual zoning recommendations. So I think we'll go through an exercise like this for each of the 9 or so recommendations. Some of them might be a little easier. We won't have to go block by block, but at least this is our kind of our kickoff to the writing the changes for those 9 recommendations. So housing recommendations 1 through 3, just a quick recap. Number 1 was multiple family housing in general commercial, service, and core commercial. So as we mentioned, allowing multiple family housing in the commercial districts is really kind of an area where there's a lower barrier to entry for this type of denser type housing. Commercial areas are already intended for more intense uses, for activity, for noise and light, and there's typically not as much opposition to denser multifamily projects within these areas because we're already anticipating higher intensity uses. Action 2 then, mixed use allowance in general commercial, service, and core commercial. So similar to where action 1 is principal use multifamily buildings where all there is residential units on all those floors, where mixed use would have it could have retail or restaurants or offices on the first floor, and then residences on upper floors. So that would be a mixed-use building. And then third, taller buildings in the core commercial zoning district, if incentivizing redevelopment and additional dwelling units. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but the more I looked at 4-story buildings and examples, I wondered if we should look at specific areas for 4 stories, or if you're comfortable at all with 4 stories. So the more I looked at other buildings and examples in similar sized communities, I said, wow, 4 is pretty tall. And so in looking at the block and lot sizes, it may be a stretch to allow that, but I mean, we could also just write it in and see what kind of proposals are received, and we could allow it. I mean, I think developers, are going to look at that and see if it works, and check the feasibility before they do anything. But we could always just allow it and accept proposals. But again, there may, as you look at that, especially the downtown area, I think there's certain areas that might be more suitable for 4 stories. But then as you kind of radiate away, I think we might need to drop down back to the current 3. So,
David, the slide with the illustrations, several slides where you gave 4 examples on each page. I think it's one of those things where if you see it and you like it, you might say, well, this is a beautiful 4-story building that would fit. But if you just say 4 stories without having something to look at, it's, it makes you wonder if it's appropriate or not. But frankly, all of the images you provided us, I thought looked like very attractive sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think it's those particular slides are somewhat of a visual preference exercise. So sometimes within zoning projects, we even make these types of surveys available to the public sometimes. So in Saugatuck, we did a downtown waterfront area. We did a survey as well as a visual preference exercise, and we asked questions. In this particular area of the waterfront, would this building be appropriate? Yes or no, and tell us why. And so this is kind of an abbreviated, summarized visual preference exercise that hopefully, as you said, can help to give us some ideas and give us direction if these are appropriate building types for the block area that we're looking at. Okay, so as we work through these slides, want to ask ourselves a couple questions. How do the following sub areas differ in character? So as I walked through them, I definitely felt different per block that I was looking at. I felt all of them should be treated differently. Recognizing those differences, should requirements differ in each sub area? I think there's a good argument for that. And if so, what's the appropriate size and scale of development in each sub area? So just that goes along with what we just said. I think certain areas, taller, bulkier buildings are going to be more appropriate, whereas you radiate out toward existing residential homes, you may want to be more sensitive to that. Then we're on the waterfront side of things. I think that's a good opportunity for larger redevelopment buildings, but we also don't want them to. In one of the slides I mentioned, you do a building with maximum. So we might want to say 60% of the lot that's how wide the building can be. So on waterfront, I think it's important to possibly consider the views of the waterfront rather than having. We have the industrial building now as kind of a Johnson Boiler is if that were ever not there, would we want a building of that bulk and scale and that wide, blocking the view, or would we want something with cut throughs, or a smaller group of buildings, or something else to give us a little bit more to activate the waterfront? Let us know it's there, because sometimes you drive by, you can't even see the river. So things to think about. Okay, so this is our sub area 1. The zoning is CEC. We have about 3 acres there. 2.2 acres is developed, although a lot of that is large pave area. I think there is some underutilization. So when I say something is underutilized, that means that the building is fairly. It's not a new building. It's something that could potentially be acquired, and the developer would have no problem taking it down and rebuilding something new just based on the age and condition of a building. So, so we have a 2.2 acres that's developed, but a lot of that is pavement, and some of the buildings are rather old, as mentioned, the dance studio building. Vacant, the 4 parcels there in the corner, that's about 0.8 acres. So that's certainly ripe for development. Nothing has happened there in recent history. Challenges here: on-site parking is going to be necessary. Off-street's really kind of impossible. North of Third, we talk about new spaces on Pine, and then even as we go to the interior streets, there could be opportunities for on-street parking in the future as well. But here, we're kind of cut off from the rest of downtown in a way, just based on the state designation, and that we just won't be able to put on-street parking on the MDOT segments.
Excuse me, David. Commissioners, is everybody familiar with the area we're talking about? Thank you.
So with this, yeah, obviously we need on-street parking. I'm sorry, on-site parking. And then our opportunities here, we have redevelopment of underutilized land. We have opportunity for mixed use or residential buildings. And I think they would have to be drawn closer to Pine Street in the intersection with, I think parking behind would probably make the most sense, especially because we have some of that paved area behind already. But I think from a visual perspective, drawing those buildings up to the street would make sense with rear parking. I copied over the same visual on all these just so that we can keep looking at the same picture as well. So when I look at this area, I think the stories, it's mentioned, like, I think we should incentivize that top story. So if we have if we allow for 3 stories, I think we should only allow 4 if there's going to be a residential component to it. So I don't think we should just allow a 4-story office building. I think we should only incentivize those higher stories if it's doing something that's implementing our plan. So here the question is, is 3 stories plus 1 extra 4 appropriate with residential, or is 2 stories in the 3rd story being residential here more appropriate? So this is just a bulk and scale question. You think 4 stories is okay here? In terms of setbacks, I think that this is an area where the minimum of a 0-foot setback, front setback, is fine. I think we can draw properties up to the right-of-way. Now, obviously, that right-of-way line is going to be inside of the sidewalk, so there's still going to be sidewalk in green space. The buildings aren't going to be right on the road. There's going to be, could be 15 feet even of right-of-way before the building starts, but the right-of-way is measured from, the setback is measured from the right-of-way. So I don't think setbacks are really necessary here, but we also may want to call out a maximum setback. So we don't do that a lot, but maximum setback is where you have, typically we're used to minimum, but a maximum says, well, you can't put your building any further away. It's got to be drawn up to this location. So the building kind of shifts closer to the road and gives you more of that downtown building aesthetic as well. I think we should also have frontage requirements on the building. So here you had mentioned some of the buildings that in the pictures look really nice because a lot of them have front entries, balconies, porches, and other features that give them that character. So I think we could add in frontage requirements to require that those types of elements are included. Windows, so that's also something that's in a lot of downtown zoning where in these, people always ask where these numbers came from, but it's kind of in a lot of downtown form-based codes, the amount of windows visibility is 33 to 80% on the ground floor, and it's a little bit lesser on the upper floors, 20 to 70%, that you have a high amount of windows and glass, so that gives character. It shows people, as people are in there dining or shopping, it gives you that see activity and things going on, and it's not just a brick wall. So that actually lends to the character of future buildings. Parking, I think in this location, side or rear makes the most sense. Landscaping, I don't think we'd really have landscaping requirements except for trees within the public right-of-way, street trees. And then outdoor space, I could see that being accomplished through rooftop or porches, but not necessarily like green space on the site, because it's just, there's not much to work with here. So I wouldn't say, we need to have 20% lawn area here. I'd have no, green space requirement, but you can have, outdoor space on rooftops and porches. And then, so here, I think all of our retail office services uses make sense. In the master planning process, we talked about, would we allow for ground floor residential? And I think you guys said we'd rather address that as we're zoning. So, do we want to allow for ground floor residential, or do we always want businesses on the bottom floor? Or do we want just allowed a full residential building? So.
Can I ask a question? All right, I'm not a financial expert, but let's say we have ground floor retail and 2 or 3 stories of residential. Somebody has to want to have retail at that ground floor. The developer, whoever owns that building, what if he has residential units and he can't find anybody that wants retail on that floor? That building is in trouble. That developer is in trouble. How is this all going to play out? How is all that financial, life, as Lyndon said, is something like life is what happens when the rest of us are planning. So what happens in those scenarios?
That's a great comment, and that comes up a lot when people talk about this exact requirement in downtowns. Some jurisdictions will say, we don't care. We want there to be that walking traffic. We want there to be that, the microbrewery and the restaurant on that first floor. But others will say, let's not prescribe it. Let's just give the developer the opportunity, make it the most flexible for somebody to do something nice downtown. So I think that's a really great perspective, and that may be where you go on this. Other communities might say, and it's probably in other communities where there's a lot more demand for it, that they can be more prescriptive about that ground floor use. But I think to simplify things, if you didn't prescribe the first floor, you could just let the market and the developers make that decision.
Yeah, I think that might be just a risk that the developer takes, and they can like pre-lease the buildings before construction. So yeah, that could be something the developer does. My husband's dealt with this a little bit, so that's just kind of what they have to deal with. But
Okay, please continue.
Okay, so with this, anything that sticks out on this slide as being off track? I think really the setbacks and the frontage, windows, parking, I think those should make sense. Really, the main question mark for me was, do we want to still consider the 4th story in this area? So we would, at that point, probably go up to about 45 feet or so for a building with 4 stories. And I think we mentioned last time, Craig said the fire truck is able to.
Fire truck is 50 feet, but it depends on how close you get fire and everything.
Yeah, and as we prepare recommendations, we can certainly run everything by the fire department as well.
Craig, I guess I just want to make sure I heard an answer there. Our current fire department equipment reaches 50 feet with.
The ladder height is 50 feet, but it's not 50 feet because the ladder is always going to be on an angle. And it depends on how close you get the truck to the building, if there's a condition or incident going on. So he can't always guarantee it's going to reach the 4th floor.
And so this is a case where if buildings are drawn closer to the public right away, that may help the angle issue or just their rear access as well. So it kind of depends on, and some of this will depend on the site design as well and what's proposed. So I think any development would need to be reviewed by the fire department, and that may, while we may allow something in a certain place based on the design and access, it may be lower just based on fire review anyway.
can you show us the images that went with this area?
So all these buildings, so these are 3- and 4-story buildings. You know, the one on Grand Haven in the bottom right, that one probably has the, I don't know if that one looks as good as the other ones, but you know, all these have, you know, first floors include that high percentage of glass. There's balconies. There's rooftop space. So on the upper left, you see that 3rd story is kind of a walkout 3rd story with some space up there. I think that might Pentwater or Granny. I think it's Pentwater. The bottom left is Pentwater. So all these buildings, you know, are drawn to the road. They're either 3 or 4 stories. They have that open space either on the roof or in porches, and they have those architectural elements that make it look like a good, strong, attractive downtown building.
Yeah, I think that addresses Regina's concern, at least from my point of view, that when you see something this attractive, it makes you more open-minded to the idea. And I think you're also suggesting that, you know, anything that would be proposed would still be going through a review process.
You know, I can see this is just my eye, the top right one looks like something that could fit in Ferrisburg. Some of the other ones look like something in Chicago. And people, number 5 in the survey was maintain the small town community feel, the bedroom community feel. And you've seen the way that people react every time we have a building project here. For David Brockmeyer's, for Stillwater, for the storage facility, people are just in arms about this. So how are we going to present this to people and not lose their trust and meet these goals that we have for housing?
I'll play devil's advocate for a moment if I could, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
you can, Lucifer.
And that is that I keep on trying to remind myself that this is something to be able to give developers ideas that, hey, there's enough lack of height restriction that I can make something financially viable there. And then as the plan would develop, I could see them making changes to make it more appealing to Ferrisburg. So I would just soon see the plan, the concepts that we're laying out be as open as possible to try to invigorate as much interest in development 5, 10, 20 years down the road in the area. Because it's not necessarily for tomorrow, is it, David? It's down the road, and that whole area could change tremendously 10 years down the road.
I was thinking about, because we have some parcels here and also downtown that are owned locally, and some where some people may not be thinking of selling them right now or have said that they aren't gonna. So I'm just trying to think too, like if I were in their shoes, which one of these will I get the best investment off of later from a developer? That's why I'm looking at these. Like if I own those, what would I want said right now or considered right now so that I can get the most money out of that property too? I think that might be what it comes down to in 5, 10, 15 years.
I'm not arguing against it. I'm for it. I'm just saying, let's be realistic because you know, the knives come out sometimes and they don't understand. There's so much, maybe communication is the key because for like the Brockmeyer project, there's so much misinformation. You know, there are going to be a marina there and all kinds of things that just were not true. So maybe the key is communication.
You're right, because a lot of people, like when they look at, like this is what comes up the first thing is just the corner. Because a lot of people are like, well, we want something there. And so yeah, you're right, there's going to be a lot of opinions regardless.
So David, you were asking about 3 stories or 4 stories. I would just soon not put a restriction on it that way.
But would you support that top story only if there's a residential component? Would you want I guess that top story, if we go 4 stories, like in this case, would you be supportive of 3 stories and then 4 stories only if there's a residential component? And then like another area, you might say 2 stories, only 3 if residential. So I'm just wondering if you'd like some sort of incentive for residential for these areas.
A developer could always come to us with another concept that didn't really fit that framework, correct?
With residential or
They might come to us with a concept with no residential.
well, and I guess that's a question for you.
Or always.
We could, that's the other option is just we say 4 stories and we can be more flexible. So the incentive is something that we kind of, it is just that, an incentive for residential, but if we just allow for, you could get 4 of residential or mixed use or a fully, an office building.
It seems like in most of these, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you
It seems like in most of these communities, I can go right in downtown Spring Lake Village, and they have a retail or restaurant downstairs and residential upstairs. So it's a concept that's financially viable, but it seems like most of them are in resort communities, which is what we're at. And so it's not going to necessarily be workforce housing affordable. I mean, it's not going to fit the price point for the housing that we're trying to address in the area. Maybe that's just the plain fact of us living in a resort area.
Yeah, well, part of this effort is supply, and supply is one effort, but yeah, they may be market rate. I mean, we could also look at other incentives for more affordable housing too. That's another discussion that we can. I think zoning is one aspect, but then you can also look at that as an incentive as well.
I love that you're being flexible about these things. I think we have to separate the fact that waterfront is not going to be affordable. So if you build something on the water, it's not going to be affordable. So we have to look at affordable options as well, which is what I think the key point here, isn't it? It's that we want people to be able to live here. And when you're talking Johnson Boiler Work, if Larry Hines ever develops that property, it isn't going to be affordable, I guarantee you.
Yeah, these will be, I mean, if they're redeveloped, these could be very attractive, nice places, downtown environment. And again, this is one of 3 of 9 recommendations. The other ones are going to be more residential infill that could be lend themselves to more affordability than something an attractive downtown area. So I think it all is ultimately going to work together for that increased supply and
Yeah, you're quick. You have all these other ideas. I like that.
I thought maybe we just allow, instead of prescribing, like you said before, the first floor prescribing what use needs to be, concerning the top floor, are we okay with just saying, if we're gonna do four stories, we'll just let them do 4 stories, let the market decide?
So to connect with that, as we're talking about this, I'm trying to think of in our community other buildings that fit this mold, and I'm thinking of the Van Wagner exit, that Capitol building. Is that 2 stories or 3 stories? Do you know, Craig? That's only 2. Okay, so really we don't have any currently. We don't have any. I'm trying to think of 3-story, and then we're talking 4 stories now of strictly commercial. Is that the discussion that we're having, if we would require that 4th floor to be residential?
That was one of
Yeah.
the suggestions that
Okay.
Consider that just for discussion.
I would like to see a residential component included if there was a 4th story. To me, I'm personally struggling with a fourth floor in that area. When I look at these buildings, I just think of it being like just towering over and really losing that small town charm. I'm open to development. I'm usually pro, but I am a little hesitant. But I'm just one person. But yeah, I would like to see some sort of residential component in it if it did go to 4.
Excuse me, David. We have, I think, 4 sub-areas to review. Maybe we should have a little discussion about each of the other 3 and then circle back, because I think when you look at the other 3 areas, that will kind of inform how you feel about this area as well. So rather than trying to finish the first, could you take us through the other three, and then let's step back and look at them all again.
Sure, sure. And just one other follow-up thought, so I don't forget. We could always consider that 4-story only through a PUD process as well. So that could give you a lot more control over that bulk and scale of a 4-story building. So might be something else we just jot down as a note for the top story.
Just on a side note real fast, so the 4 lots that we see that are not developed, I know that those have been for sale and then they weren't for sale. Do you know, Craig, are those currently still for sale, or does one owner own all of them?
One owner owns all 4. and
Okay.
He's willing to sell them.
Oh, okay, so he is willing to sell and they could all be purchased together, okay.
Okay, so then moving on to sub-area 2, so this is all our waterfront area. So this is, we have, to the south, we have the LI3 industrial zoning, and then to the north is our CC zoning. So Johnson Boiler is 6.5 acres. They have about 2 acres there to the south that's somewhat undeveloped. And then to the north, we have 8 acres for Keenan Marina, developed about 6.5 acres, and there's 1.5 open to the south, and then a little strip to the north as well. So the challenges here, obviously, active business use. There's going to be most likely a much longer time frame for redevelopment. I think these are strong businesses. There's, as far as I've heard, there's no one's intending to pack up and go. So, but as you know, during our master planning process, this is obviously a long-term look at the city. In this zoning, we wouldn't necessarily have to rezone these areas, but we could allow for them to be redeveloped or have the zoning available should the industrial property, should the owners wish to redevelop that or sell it for redevelopment. So obviously there's active business use there, longer time frame. I think there's a sensitivity to waterfront views and water quality, so I think we need to be conscious of that as we zone these areas and plan. Mentioned there's some areas for redevelopment. There's some green space on those lots, and then I think there's some opportunity for to preserve views and activate that waterfront. To the south, if that lot was redeveloped, I think there could be a great opportunity for a boardwalk or pathway between the 4th Street end and the park to the south. I think that'd be an incredible waterfront boardwalk opportunity. So I think with that, those are things we should consider with zoning and future development.
Mr. Chair. Craig, has Keenan got any timetable yet for that building that we approved to the south there?
The site plan was approved by the Planning Commission, City Council. The 1-year time period is expired.
Yes.
And so if they wanted to do it, they have to come back to the Planning Commission, go through the whole process again.
Right. So it's a dead issue right now.
Yes.
For us.
Yes.
Which area is this, Craig?
The south of Keenan Marina.
Have you heard if they're
Thank you.
still interested in, or?
When I called them up last year and told them they had a few months left before it expired, they checked with the owner, and the owner said that they wanted to see how the summer business went.
They what?
Wanted to see how the summer business went last year. And then summer came and fall came and then it expired. They are building new docks out there though, right now.
Yeah.
But conceivably, the work we're doing now might affect future plans.
Yes.
David, sub-area 2 does not include, it's 2 islands. Why is the center of that not included in sub-area 2?
Well, because that was all residential already over the boat slips, I kind of felt like that was already something that was kind kind of meeting the downtown goals of having residential above second floor residential and already there. So, so I didn't study that specifically just because it was already there. But I think we should consider it. I think as we relook at everything east of Pine Street, we need to consider current zoning versus proposed zoning in how it would affect that middle portion as well. But just for this sake, I thought north and south were the areas that would be more ripe for redevelopment, I suppose. And that, but maybe that's not a correct assumption.
Thank you.
So then moving into the notes for sub-area 2. So obviously Johnson Boiler is industrial zoned. So the owner would have to apply for rezoning if that was to be redeveloped. So that could be a CC zoning of some sort. But until that happened, they would remain as industrial. Again, the same question of stories. What's appropriate, 3 or 4? Here are the setbacks. I don't think that, we're not, these are much deeper than the other lots on the other side of the road. I don't have an issue with front setbacks, and even parking may need to be in front of these buildings. So I think when you have waterfront, it's a little bit different because we're not drawing buildings the street, but we may have to allow for the parking in the front so that the waterfront side is more of an active public space. So that could be the priority, or parking to the side. So there could be opportunity for the front storefront to be activated along Pine Street, and then there to be a nice waterfront area, and then parking on the side. So it's a little bit different here than the past sub area. I mentioned side setbacks. I think we should have a fairly significant side setback. It could be 20 feet, or we could say that that side setback along with a maximum building width. So mentioned before, you could have it to where it's a 60% maximum width, or even 50% maximum width compared to the width of the lot. So that could open up some views, or just ensure that views to the water are preserved. Frontage, windows, similar comments. Parking, I think you could be a little bit more flexible. As I mentioned, front, side, possibly rear too. I think if we just left it open, the developer would figure out what would work best. I think landscaping here, I think there's more opportunity to require green space on these properties rather than maxing out the impervious surface. So I think because we're not going to have buildings that are fully out, side to side, there is some opportunity for some green space or some park-like space on these properties. And then similar questions concerning land uses. I think the general idea is we may want to be a little bit less prescriptive, but allow the market to dictate what goes in. As long as the building looks good, we're maybe not so concerned about the use. So a couple of pictures, and these are really more waterfront residential. So there's certainly some other examples that we could have found that have waterfront commercial as well, with residential on upper floors, but here we have a two-story example in the bottom left, 4 stories in the upper left. Upper right is Saugatuck. I think that's 2 to 3. There's almost maybe a 3rd story there, and just a straight 3
And these are all residential, no retail component or residence, restaurants?
Yeah, these ones are all examples of primarily retail. I'm sorry, primarily residential. And so, yeah, we could find some other examples, but just for the sake of just for because of the time, this is all we have. But yeah, I think there's probably some other good examples of mixed use rather than. All these did have some level of marina type use to them, though, so that there were marina offices or storage and other type of facilities that were supporting the marina use as well.
Let's keep moving.
Okay, sub-area 3. So third 3 of 4. So this is 3rd Street to 5th Street west of Pine. So all the 2 blocks on the right are zone CC, and then we have S service to the west, so left. So this whole area is about 7 acres. There's really no vacant land here, but there are some lots that are underutilized. So obviously the Tri-City Oil site has a lot of green space, a lot of open space there, and the Fifth Third Bank has a lot of parking with the building closer to the corner there. So there's a lot of surface parking area. So the challenges here: smaller lots, multiple owners, and then the need to assemble or reconfigure lots to be able to get a larger building. So obviously you could redevelop single small lots, but they are fairly small. I could see this being cases to where you had 2 or 3 lots that a developer would buy, combine them, and then propose your off-site or off-street parking. Because there probably would be some here, but again, I think there's also some opportunity for possibly having additional on-street parking within these secondary roads as well. We mentioned last time near the post office, there's some 5-minute spots there, but depending on the road widths, further away from Pine and Third, you could possibly look at on-street parking there too. So opportunities, this is just kind of really the core of the downtown, so walkable downtown development area. We could redevelop underutilized land, so older buildings, even there are some houses in this area, possibly activate additional on-street parking, and I could even see sidewalks going in here as well as properties are redeveloped. So it's really kind of a core downtown area. And then moving on, so the height, again, we have our height question. I'm also a little bit concerned with 4 stories. I just as I was driving through Spring Lake on the way here, and then thinking about those other examples, is 4 really the right one? When like you said, all we have is 1 stories now, 1-story buildings, and then there's the one example of the 2-story commercial building in a different district. But again, here, concerning setbacks, I think this is similar to our CC district. I don't really think the setbacks are minimum setbacks are important. You may even want to have the maximum setback to ensure buildings are drawn to the road, and then parking's not secondary or behind the building. Frontage, windows, same comments. Parking, so I said side, rear, or street, but not in front of the buildings on the site. Landscaping, these are this is such a small. These are small lots, a constrained area, so I don't think there needs to be site landscaping so much as, but we would want to see street trees. Then a number of questions about uses, and I think as we go into here, the first 4 uses are what we discussed already, but then I think we start to get into an area where townhouses might be appropriate. So townhouses or row houses drawn to the street. I think this is an area where those could blend in well with principal use commercial buildings or mixed use buildings. So townhouse buildings, you could have 3-story townhouses that are similar scale, but are more residential character. And so here, look at some different buildings. So the bottom right, that's a 3-story townhouse building, the brick one in the bottom right. Then the bottom left, that's 4-story residential apartment building with there's restaurants, retail, and services on the bottom of that building. Both those are Easttown, Grand Rapids, near where I live. And then the other top right left picture you saw before. So Yeah, I think that one's I think the scale of that one's a little bit more compatible maybe with this area rather than some of those larger buildings we saw before. Then even the one on the top right is even scaled back a little bit, where that's more your southern coastal charm or waterfront charm, rather than large bulkier buildings. So thoughts? Any? Do you want me to just go on to the last area before we?
If there's no objection, I'd like us to get all four on the table, so to speak.
Okay. So so the pictures here, the idea is, I think there's a different scale. I think at different types of buildings, even the townhouses. I think there's a little bit different between the waterfront area and sub-area 1 than this sub-area 3. And then even as we go into sub-area 4, I think that this is more evident. So here we have CC and Service District. This is about 9.8 acres. Most of it's developed. So you see there's a lot of buildings. There's not a lot of vacant area. At 0.2 acres somewhere, I'm not sure where that even was, but I think there's some vacant area somewhere here. But again, a lot of it's built out with residential dwellings. And even on the east side there's a lot just single family. And so
That's Ridge Street?
yes, as it's
There's a lot of creativity in how people have utilized those parcels.
yeah.
When you go down, yeah, and then even like I was just there Tuesday at a dog groomer, and I was going past and then driving north up there, and then looking at two of the businesses where they're like on that. I don't know, just some of those parcels are kind of unique how they're set up.
Yep. So the challenge here, I think, on the east side, especially along Ridge, I mean, we have kind of an established residential area. And I almost wonder if we need to look at that as residential zoning rather than being in the CC district. So
I thought so too, David, that you might make a carve out for the residences on Ridge Street and make this the rest of sub area 4 the rest of the district.
I think it's a good observation, because I think the sub area is because of the zoning, but then we look at the sub areas like, well, why is it zoned this way? Why is that the primarily single family residential area pulled into CC? So that's something that we could always look at it, rezoning, and that could be our our RG3 or similar district. So some of the challenges here, again, we have multiple owners, same issue about small lots, and they may need to reconfigure and assemble lots. Virtually any new project will require redevelopment of existing buildings, so there's really no vacant space here, only the 0.2 acres I found somewhere there. Opportunities, so I think there's still got good opportunities. It's walkable, it's still downtown. You could activate you could redevelop older buildings, so there are a lot of older commercial buildings here. Activate additional on-street parking on Oak and Fifth, sidewalk development in the same locations. So here I mentioned, so I guess my one thought is this, the S district. I'm not sure if we really even need that district. I wonder, another zoning map question is maybe that's all absorbed into CC as we re-look at CC in general, or we keep it as is, and maybe that's rezoned in the future. But I think we need to look at maybe the designations of some of these areas as well. So the residential area to the east, and then all the way to the west is our S area, and maybe those areas are rezoned. So the east to residential, the west maybe goes to CC. But I think we can look at that a little bit more detail later. Then so west of Oak, for the commercial area, I see this as these buildings as maybe being a little bit lesser in size and height and scale. Well, mainly height, because we're kind of moving into more residential area. I think the setbacks can be. I think here we don't necessarily need to draw everything so close to the road, but they can maybe have a reasonable 10-foot setback. Maybe it's it starts to transition into more of a different type of area. Frontage, windows, parking, similar as the last sub area. And then here, I also have the question about townhouses here. I think this is definitely, as we transition north, townhouses are also appropriate here. So I think these are some examples that show kind of that step down and transition. So we have the same East Town 3-story townhouse building to the bottom left. Bottom right, that's in Grand Haven. Top right, I think that's Grand Haven, and then top left, I don't know where that is, but that's a kind of a 2-story mixed use on the top left. So I think this is kind of a transitioning of scale as we go north. So it might be something to consider. So although if we do chop off that east portion and make that residential, maybe it's not as important west of Oak to be so control that bulk and scale so much, because it is kind of separated at that point. Then you're within sight of 31 as well. So that another kind of pros and cons there as well.
What is this currently zoned as, this section?
I think everything east of Oak is CC. Everything west is S service.
Could you like kind of describe the difference between those two? Like like the CC and the G, I just get a little confused with that. Maybe it's, I mean, I've got my book at home. I can
Yeah.
look, but.
What is S?
It's a service district, and I know my cheat sheet with my setbacks, but I think the idea is it's more general businesses and maybe there's some light manufacturing service type businesses. The intent is definitely not to restaurants and retail
Okay.
and definitely not residential as well.
Well, I would be all for possibly moving it to just a CC and doing away with the S designation. But are we at the point where we can step back and look at all four, David, or were you going to say a little bit more about?
I think that's for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to jump in first here?
I guess I will.
Thank
if you
you.
don't mind. I am leaning towards not wanting 4 stories. I don't know. I feel like 3 is more our character in the city, but I do think I do like the component of wanting one of those floors residential. Like the whole topic here, I feel like we're trying to go for housing. So whether it's 3 or 4, I would think we would want to at least have 1 floor be residential. I feel like we have a lot of, even in Leppings, we've got office or, commercial space that sits empty a lot. And to have like a whole building that's just going to be commercial that could potentially sit empty when we've got so much need for housing, my opinion would be that we want to have some kind of, something in there that we would want some kind of residential included in these buildings. But that's just my take.
Thank you.
I guess my question is, as we're looking at these different sections, do we want to start compartmentalizing them as businesses kind of in one section and then townhomes and residential in one, or do we want an equal sprinkle of townhomes in between in between commercial buildings? I don't know. As we're looking at these 4 units, it's like, is this the housing section and this is the business section, or is it sprinkled in all together? I don't know. And I don't have the answer. That's my guiding question.
Well, I think this review is, as was mentioned, we're trying to make sure that everything we do in the big picture is as friendly and welcoming to housing as possible. And so that's kind of why we're doing this exercise. Um, And I'll just make a comment, and then I'll let the other members chime in. I'm really excited, David, with your general, what you've presented to us and how it could be a kind of like the master plan, kind of a long-term. We're trying to say, well, it may be not happening this week or this year, but we're trying to do everything we can to say we're open for business for housing that seems to fit Ferrysburg, that seems to, as we see it today. And just another side note, part of the, Craig, did we get the housing study, the link to the housing study? I'm not sure that was part of the package or not. We had the newspaper article about it, and we had Richard's AI summary. Yeah, did we actually get isn't it like a 100-page study that you can read online? But again, the newspaper report was included in the packet, and also the interesting summary that Richard created using AI. So I just mentioned that's part of why we're here. There's this new update on the housing need in Ottawa County, and it's continues to, basically we need more housing in almost every description except perhaps the most expensive properties. Continuing with comments on what David's presented here.
I would say, for one thing, we do have to remember this is a visionary thing, like our master plan, because just to give you a little institutional memory, we at one point in our master plan, not a revision, a fully done master plan, I was on the planning commission, and the sand mine was all planned out. We were going to have mixed unit development with garden apartments, some single family homes, some shops, and that didn't happen, did it? So we have to remember this is visionary. And I think the thing, when we look at some of these examples, if you want to really make people buy into it, you're going to have the most homey looking, small town looking places. Just looking at those up there, that top right one to me looks like something that would fit in with what people here think of as a bedroom community. But how do you control that? If a developer comes with an architectural plan, how much control do we have over that? So I think there's a lot of ifs in this project, but I do think it's really important to address it, especially insofar as affordable houses, or what's the other one? Accessible housing was the other term. So.
David, Craig, what is this is just discussion tonight? We're not making a decision on anything tonight. This is just
discussion to give me a bit more direction on coming up with recommendations. So there's some initial recommendations and thoughts sprinkled into these slides, but I wanted to get some feedback just to make sure I'm not going in a direction that's not going to be accepted.
Well, again, my feedback is this is really good, and it's responsive to the general idea that we're trying to open up housing opportunities as aggressively as we can, but also trying to not obviously propose something inappropriate or just too wild. So we do have a couple of other things, and this is just discussion tonight. Would anyone like to chime in further on this before we move on to our other business?
I was just going to say that it's interesting that we've got such a difference in terms of waterfront and the value of that versus what we were just looking at there in sub-area 4, right along the expressway, that is essentially just industrial land, but conceivably based upon our zoning, proactive zoning, we might be able to get some housing in there. But doing the waterfront's gonna be interesting, particularly with Keenan and their permitting being expired now, presents an interesting opportunity. I think to expect affordable housing down in that area is a pipe dream. Just, there isn't enough money there, but to make it financially viable in a waterfront area.
I will add that I think in sub-area 4, you could have more industrial-looking housing. What you've presented, David, is very attractive, but I think this is kind of a closed-in area, and you've got the highway, you've got office and office business studios, and having sort of warehouse loft type space above that might be more affordable. You know, maybe owners having a studio to live in upstairs.
Property is just worth a lot less than it is down next to Johnson Boiler.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
being on the lake.
You bet.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you, David.
And we want to do Pine Street next or the fill permit next? Pine Street kind of ties in with this discussion, so could I suggest we turn to the parking discussion on Pine Street? And do we have visuals for that? Craig or David, can you show us what we're looking at? Tell us what we have.
At the last planning commission meeting, there was some discussion about having angle parking or parallel parking on Pine Street. So we asked the city engineer to come up with some drawings on what on-street parking might look like on Pine Street. This is his first take at it. He indicated that angle parking probably would not work in this area due to the number of drives and the flow of traffic off of Ridge Avenue.
So we have a recommendation against parallel parking, but this shows what the kind of parking where you back into it.
This is parallel parking here.
Oh, it is parallel?
Yeah. His recommendation is not to have angle parking.
Excuse, I'm getting my terms transposed, sorry.
But parallel parking was supported.
This is what his
Yeah.
first glance would be, to have parallel parking on Pine Street.
I'm just envisioning driving in and, I mean, if there's no cars there, then you can usually just pull right in, but I feel like that would definitely be a hazard if you did a traditional parallel parking where you go ahead and then you back in. I mean, with that road, what is that, 35, 40 miles an hour?
Gonna slow traffic down.
Yeah, I'm surprised that would fly.
Do we need this? I mean, what, is it, if we build it, they will come, like Field of Dreams? I mean, why do we need this parking here so far right now? I don't see the need for it right now.
So I believe we're repaving the street, and this is an opportunity to do it at this time if we wanted to do it.
That's correct. And it's in the master plan, something about having on-street parking on Pine Street to support the businesses in that area.
So what happens in the winter when you're not allowed to park on the street? Would that apply here as well?
Well, yeah,
From-
yes, because if you look at the rendering here, there's concrete bump outs for sidewalks, so that the sidewalk distance is a lot less. So it's a pain in the neck even for plowing as well, but.
And the question I have at the end of our email that we got, this is a high-level look at the potential for parking and spaces near intersections and drives may be needed to be eliminated. Drives may need to be, whose drives? What drives may need to be eliminated? Or if you could be added. Whose drives are we eliminating?
When I look at these spots, Regina, I hear what you're saying about, like, if you build it, they will come. I feel like that is what this proposal is. But I see it right now, like, I'm thinking realistically, who's going to be using these spots? And what comes to my mind is it's going to be overflow of marina guests. Like, I don't really see other people, I mean, unless it's like, I don't know what the boat slip condos, I don't know what their parking situation's like, if that would be overflow parking for them if they have guests. But yeah, I don't really feel like currently there aren't really businesses that maybe Pine Street a little overflow, but yeah.
And a lot of that property on Cannon Marina has boats for sale that could be used for parking if they need it, so.
We talked about one time when, help me with the street that goes where we were like, oh, there was gonna be a kayak launch there or something. What is it, the end of Fourth?
Probably more at William Ferry Park, a kayak launch someday.
It was the public access at the end of that road. If you did have the on-street parking, that would be parking for later because that's a narrow, that public access, it's pretty narrow. So if we wanted to do if the city decided later to do something like kayak launch, pave it and do like food trucks, I don't know. But if they went, then that would be an opportunity for parking for that.
You're talking in between Johnson Boiler and the condos?
Yeah, it's just, like I sat down there twice. It's nice down there. It'd be cool if we could do something with it, but that parking could be utilized for that where you don't have to consider parking if you wanted to develop the end of that road. I'm cool with the parking. I think it's fine. It will slow it down right there. But we spent time talking about it, developing it. Having 4 lanes didn't make much sense. I think at the last one too, we talked about the traffic study saying that really you only need 2 lanes. Right. Well, that in and of itself isn't a reason to do it. It is one factor to consider.
Change the overall environment of what it looks like, not how it feels.
It
Make
would.
it more pedestrian friendly, particularly since we're going to have getting more and more bike traffic to the community.
Yes.
I do know bikes will go because that sidewalk's pretty torn up on both sides. So I know if I was on my bike, I might decide to go on the road real quick on those parking spots just because those sidewalks pretty
Very
torn up.
thin, trying to pass someone.
Yeah.
David, apart from this proposal, if as things develop in this area, could there be parking on Oak Street and 4th and 5th?
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. We'd have to do the measurements just to see what the cross-section is and if it could be done just with striping or if any expansions would be necessary. Obviously on 4th, there is the 5-minute parking there already. 5th is pretty narrow, but Oak also has a pretty good cross-section there. Maybe at least on one side could work, but I think these are all good opportunities as there are future paving projects in this area.
I think this is very helpful. You know, at the last meeting, we didn't have something to look at like this. But I do hear the comments that and this is a pretty busy street. And the reason we would be building the parking kind of doesn't exist right now. We're talking about building parking for businesses that aren't there today. So I think it's really good to see this. but I'm not sure there's really a compelling argument to go forward with this myself, but Gina?
I agree.
Okay.
I just have one comment. I think, like when we had the master plan open house, we had a lot of comments about the bike situation crossing there by 3rd Street. And I believe this all kind of came up so that we could possibly have a crosswalk further down and that the traffic might be a little bit less having 2 lanes, and that we kind of wanted to start the development of a downtown. And I think if the city can do anything, that's gonna be possibly not like a lot of money. If we're already redoing Pine Street, this is something that we can implement that could start attracting people to the visions that I think we're all seeing with these new buildings and the opportunities that we can create here. And if we start looking at businesses that are gonna have, that we can walk to, and there's not a lot of land, so when you create these businesses, we have to have so much parking for them. So I myself would welcome the parking because I just think it's a way that the city maybe not so much expense if we're already redoing the road, like our contribution of trying to get people to look at this area differently, how we are wanting to see it. You know, everybody says we're just a pass-through, we have no downtown, and I thought that was kind of some of the feedback we got from the master plan open house was people wanted to see something like that in Ferrisburg, so
Well stated.
that's my
Yeah.
opinion
Well
on that.
stated.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is building the infrastructure, and I'm glad you brought that up because Gary and I have served on the Recreation Commission, and for Fire Barn Park, the first phase that we've worked on is building a parking lot. It's not attractive, it's not something that people want to spend money on, but we have to build the parking lot and the spaces so then we can have the pickleball and potentially a splash pad and build that park. So I'm glad you brought that up because that really connects with what we're doing there. You need that infrastructure to bring all the things. But I also see what Regina's saying, and it's really not necessary right now because there aren't the buildings. So I'm very torn. Thanks.
It's hard for us to put our 10 or 20 or 30-year goggles on. But if if the intent is to make it more walkable and make it retail friendly, I could visualize people coming in from Spring Lake and coming to that stop sign, and what are they staring at? They're looking at the 2-lane street that used to be 4 lanes and potentially more retail down there. More of a downtown feel.
But the survey number 7 was a downtown. Number 5 was maintain the small town community. So, I mean, I didn't move here so that I could have major shopping. I moved here to have a home for my sons. And I don't know, I just don't see the point of doing this right now.
Was one side parking explored versus having parking on both sides of the street? Was that ever discussed? Just limiting that, or does that not work? I guess I'm talking to you. I don't know.
We didn't ask the engineer to look at that. We just asked him to look at parallel parking and angle parking.
And this is all being driven by responses from our master planning, correct?
Correct.
Crossing 2 lanes, obviously, with bump outs and cars there, much shorter crossing. And, again, with markings and other signage, just having cars parked, even if it's a handful of cars, that's going to naturally slow traffic. Bump outs as well, shorter crossings, and yes, we don't quite have the businesses there yet, but I think it does lay the framework for that future. And I think quaint, walkable, small downtowns have on-street parking. That's really kind of like time will tell if they're going to be used right away, but I think it does lay the framework for the future. And I think Heather brought up a great point. If it could be done at low cost now rather than later, trying to retrofit something that's already been repaved and done, it could be a much more cost effective to do it now.
Craig, what do you need from us on this? You want a yes or no? Do we want to support parking and change the configuration of the street? When is the job happening?
Well, first, I'm looking for some direction from planning commission, and then we're gonna take it to city council. City council is gonna review a proposal for engineering, and the engineering is gonna include redesigning the street for parking. And so then city council is gonna make that decision whether they wanna go with on-street parking or just repave.
Has this came up at city council before, or was there?
No.
Rich, does council need planning to say, do it this way or do it that way, or can we just say, we've discussed it and there's, and just pass it on to council?
I would love to.
So I guess, they're kind of a whole straw or consensus of planning commission, what are you looking for? On-street parking or just repave it?
I'm hearing two opinions expressed. I'm not sure that,
I could take that to city council too, that it was kind of a split.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our final item, the fill permit application for 1,300 cubic yards of fill at 1,7290 Peppermill Drive. I believe there's a recommendation to approve this. David?
Yeah, this was something that was brought to the city's attention. A house is being built at 17,290. It is built, just about completed. I think they're living in there now. And we noticed that there was some fill being brought in. And so we contacted the developer, and sure enough, there was some fill being brought in. So we asked for a fill permit. A fill permit application's in your packet. We forwarded it on to the city engineer. He walked up the site with the Public Works Department, and he did have a recommendation in there to approve it. This is a 2-acre site, so there's 1,300 cubic yards of fill, which is a lot of fill, but it's a large piece of land as well.
Your Honor, can I, so this has already been done, right? Like, if we said no, they'd have to tear the house down and take all the fill out. Okay. I just was like, I was reading the dates and then I drove by and I'm like, it's a done deal. This is a permit that was missed, so.
That's on the list.
So action from us?
Yes, planning commission needs to take action on it, yes.
So,
Can I ask one thing? Do they get, is there a fee, a higher fee since they didn't get the permit? Michelle Tanner is a known builder. I'm pretty sure she would have known that she needed a permit for this.
There's no provision for a fee, a higher fee.
Okay.
It's a $500 fee for the application.
Got it.
I guess we would entertain a motion to approve the fill permit application.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This is the second call for public comments at 8:33. No one in the audience. Zoning administrators report.
No report?
Chairman's report. I would like to share with the board that a citizen made me aware of a MSU Extension Service program called Tourism First Impression Assessments. And I have reviewed some of this material, and I've also asked the mayor to review some of this material. And we've made some initial contacts with MSU, and this is basically kind of a two-tier program where people look at all available information on your city, Ferrisburg, that is available online, and then they bring people to visit Ferrisburg, and the idea is to try to see how strangers see the city, and they're looking at it from the point of view of, first impressions, and what do you see when you visit Ferrisburg? And, you know, all of us live here, so we see something different, possibly, than other people. Craig, are you familiar with this program?
I think we had that, something like that, somebody come in years ago, and they did Ferrisburg, and they did, I think, Grand Haven and Spring Lake Village at the same time.
So that was another thing that we could pursue doing this on our own, or we could possibly pursue it, especially if it's been done as a Tri-City area in the past. What does it cost? How long does it take? And I'm bringing it up because of the discussion of rebranding, and I think there's interest in rebranding, but there is concern that it not cost too much, and I'd like to maybe put this on the agenda for next month as something we would talk about. It might be $5,000, and as I say, there could be something we would pursue on our own, or it could be something we would reach out to the other communities in the area and say, do we want to do this together? It would be, timing-wise, it would be next year. So it could be something that makes sense to do next year, and then push off the rebranding effort until we've gotten the benefit of this. But I just wanted to share that with everyone. That's all I have. I'd like to go to members' reports, and
No report. No report.
Mayor's breakfast tomorrow here from 8 to 10. Free food. And then the parade. And then afterwards, music in the park. All are welcome. And a lot of exciting things going on in Ferrisburg. I'm very, very excited about everything.
A lot of free food.
A lot of free food.
Craig, I have our next meeting for August 7th.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This was a hard one tonight. Pardon me? Oh, pancakes and sausage and
Is that?
we hire it out.